You wake up exhausted. You reach for a glowing screen and quietly accept that another day will slip through your fingers without a single meaningful victory. You are bleeding time. Tell yourself, you are just catching up on the world, while the brutal reality is that the modern machine is feeding on you. This ends right now. Every notification and endless scroll was mathematically engineered by brilliant minds to shatter your attention and keep you permanently small. We are breaking that chain. In this session, you will learn the exact psychological architecture required to build an attention span so impenetrable that no system can manipulate you. You will become dangerous. Will shift from being a resource consumed by others to a sovereign individual who dictates the terms of reality. Use this knowledge carefully. This information is a psychological weapon meant for self-protection and personal sovereignty, not for the destruction of innocent people around you. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I own my mind. The first law, the internal battlefield. You have been taught to blame the economy, curse the politicians, and complain endlessly about the digital noise that surrounds you every day. Here is the truth. The chaos outside of you is simply a reflection of the profound lack of discipline inside your own unguarded mind. Stop playing the victim. Machiavelli understood this core principle centuries before smartphones existed and recognized that true power begins with absolute internal dominion. He observed the greatest kings. He saw that men who conquer empires do not complain about the weather because they conquer internal state first. Your mind is defenseless. Right now, your consciousness is a territory where thousands of external inputs walk right through the front door and steal your energy. They take your power. Surrender your focus to manufactured outrage, meaningless gossip, and empty entertainment because you left the gates completely unguarded. It happens very slowly. It feels like you are just staying informed or having a little fun, but it is a systematic dismantling of your potential. The powerful operate differently. They do not react to the noise or get pulled into every passing storm that the media artificially creates for profit. They observe from above. Attention is not just something you pay, but rather the ultimate currency of human power and the foundation of all achievement. Every wasted minute hurts. Every minute you spend consuming someone else's drama is a minute of your life that is gone forever and cannot be recovered. Lock your vision down. When you finally discipline your mind and focus on a singular target, external chaos suddenly loses its ability to harm you. Markets will crash loudly. People will panic, and the world will scream for your attention while you stand in the center of the storm, completely untouchable. True power lives inside. True power does not come from controlling the outside world, but from the iron discipline you forge within your own psychology. This shift changes everything. Stop being a victim of circumstance and become the cold, calculated architect of your own unwritten destiny. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I am untouchable. The second law, the blade of ruthless elimination. Most people mistakenly believe that building immense focus means adding more complicated habits and routines to an already overcrowded daily schedule. The dangerous know better. Strategy begins with one brutal and deeply uncomfortable decision about exactly what you are willing to cut out of your life forever. Focus requires deep sacrifice. Focus is not about learning how to juggle more responsibilities with better efficiency, while trying to keep everyone around you perfectly happy. You must cut away. Focus is about identifying the things that do not serve your ultimate vision and executing them without a single second of hesitation. A blade is sharp. A blade does not cut because it is heavy, but because the edge has been sharpened down to a microscopic point. Sharpen your psychological edge. Your mental edge is honed exclusively through the ruthless elimination of everything that dilutes your energy and wastes your finite time. Think about your habits. Think about the obligations you maintain just to avoid making other people feel bad while your own dreams quietly bleed to death. You are entirely scattered, are running in 5 different directions at once, and then wondering why you never build any real momentum in this life. Machiavelli wrote about this. He noted that a wise leader engineers the exact conditions for absolute success long before the battlefield is even drawn up. Remove alternatives to victory. Create these conditions by stepping back and auditing your life with zero sentimentality to identify exactly what must be destroyed. Find your monumental goal. Identify the one target that would make everything else irrelevant, and pursue it with a cold obsession that makes ordinary people uncomfortable. Your entire energy shifts. Your conversations will become shorter, and your tolerance for complainers will drop to absolute zero as you fiercely protect your time. People will definitely notice. They will call you arrogant and say you have changed, because they are terrified of the unbending discipline you are now demonstrating. Let them talk quietly. You have stepped out of the passive herd to claim a life directed entirely by your own unbreakable and sovereign will. Unlock your hidden energy. When you stop trying to balance everything, you unlock a terrifying amount of power that was previously wasted on meaningless trivialities. The great were feared. The master strategists of history were rarely understood by the masses, but they were never defeated by the invisible trap of distraction. They moved like predators. They moved through their lives with terrifying precision, and locked onto their goals without ever letting the opinions of sheep sway them. Adopt this new identity. You are not a man trying out a new productivity technique, but rather a man who has fundamentally become focus itself. You dictate the room. When you eliminate the noise, you gain a psychological density that makes you completely unreadable to enemies and absolutely magnetic to allies. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I cut the noise. The third law, the invisible fortress. Look at the greatest men. Study every powerful individual who has ever walked this earth, and you will discover one silent habit they all share universally. They guard their attention. They protect their focus as if it were the most valuable asset in their entire empire, because it literally dictates their destiny. Money is not power. The true measure of a man's future trajectory is determined entirely by the specific direction where he consistently points his unyielding focus. The conquerors understood this. The architects of history never allowed the unwashed masses to have open access to their minds or their deeply protected inner sanctuaries. They built psychological walls. They constructed invisible barriers that precisely determined what information could enter their minds and whose demands for energy would actually be entertained. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Machiavelli called this the absolute art of selective engagement, where a sovereign leader knows exactly when to be completely and strategically unreachable. Modern life is warfare. Everything around you today is mathematically engineered by highly paid psychologists to breach your mental walls and capture your limited cognitive bandwidth. Your phone is a weapon. The devices in your pockets are designed specifically to capture your attention and hold your mind hostage inside a permanent dopamine loop. The weak scroll mindlessly, while the average person drowns in a sea of engineered chaos and manufactured anxiety. The dangerous man simply chooses to opt out completely. Step back and calculate. The ruthless mind sees the system for exactly what it is and makes a cold decision to disconnect from the parasitic noise. Audit your mental access. Protecting your attention requires you to brutally evaluate every single app, conversation, and habit that currently steals time from your designated mission. Ask one simple question. Does this specific input sharpen me into a weapon, or does it dull my edge and make me a weaker version of myself? There is no compromise. Everything in your life is either actively contributing to your ultimate vision, or it is quietly robbing you of your future. See distractions as threats. Once you stop being sentimental about your time, you transform completely and stop explaining your decisions to people who do not matter. You become selectively invisible. Stop responding to every notification and stop attending every meaningless gathering that drains your energy without offering any strategic value whatsoever. Protect your silent space. In that protected void where your attention is finally yours alone, your vision clarifies, and the suppressed version of you finally emerges. You become completely unstoppable. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I guard my empire. The fourth law, the neurological rewrite. Focus changes your biology. Sustained and disciplined focus actually rewires the physical architecture of your brain in ways that the masses will never get to experience. Most men lack endurance. They never commit to a single path long enough to feel the fundamental shift in their core psychological identity take place. This is dark psychology. This philosophy separates itself from cheap motivational garbage because it does not require you to feel inspired or believe in yourself today. It demands cold action. It simply asks you to act with relentless discipline until your brain physically restructures itself around your new identity as a sovereign ruler. You become the discipline. Neuroscience has verified what the master strategists of ancient history understood instinctively, without needing modern technology to prove it to them. The mind hardens dramatically. Every single time you resist a meaningless distraction, you cast a permanent vote for the identity of an untouchable and dangerous man. You are rewiring yourself. Every time you return to the work when your body screams for cheap comfort, you train your nervous system to seek power over pleasure. Sit in the silence. Every time you choose stillness over the glowing screen, you reclaim a piece of your sovereign mind that the world had colonized. It takes cold time. Over months of unglamorous and brutal consistency, the noise of the outside world fades away, and the pull of cheap distraction weakens significantly. You become psychologically bulletproof. Threshold for stimulation rises so high that the shallow traps used to control ordinary men hold absolutely zero power over you. Your entire presence shifts. When a man builds this level of cognitive fortress, he carries himself with a stillness that deeply unsettles people accustomed to chaos. Watch how he moves. There is a terrifying certainty in his eyes that signals to every room he enters that he knows exactly where he is going. He never seeks validation, does not need the world to agree with his vision, because he is completely governed by his own internal compass now. Internally governed men dominate, can never manipulate or control someone whose sense of direction and purpose comes entirely from an unbreakable source hidden deep within. Power is never loud. True power is the sovereign individual in the room who speaks the least, but influences the outcome more than anyone else present. He calculates every step. His focus is so absolute and consuming that reality itself bends toward his will, rather than him bending to the demands of society. You build this daily. This dominant version of you is constructed deliberately through ruthless consistency, one intensely focused day at a time, without ever looking backward. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I am the architect. The fifth law, the brutality of sacrifice. Nobody achieves greatness without profound loss. The self-help industry lies to you and sells a comfortable version of success, where you get to keep all your friends and cozy habits. The truth is darker. The Machiavellian mind deals only in cold reality, regardless of how brutal or isolating that reality happens to be. Focus demands real blood. Real focus requires the silent and unglamorous sacrifice, where you walk away from people you deeply care about, because they serve as anchors. You must cut ties. You must abandon versions of yourself that feel safe and comforts that have become so embedded in your routine they feel like limbs. Do it anyway. The man who is unwilling to sacrifice for his ultimate vision does not have a vision but merely a childish wish. Wishes belong to the weak. Machiavelli was completely unambiguous on this specific point, and warned that a leader must be prepared to do what is strictly necessary. Do not seek popularity. Do what is required to build your empire, even if it ruins your reputation among people who are comfortable with mediocrity. End the draining friendships. Do not create dramatic conflict, but simply withdraw your energy from individuals who consume your time without contributing to your overall power. Environment dictates your trajectory. The man who surrounds himself with complaining and directionless individuals will inevitably absorb their broken psychology, no matter how strong he thinks he is. You must embrace silence. The modern man fears stillness and fills every empty moment with meaningless noise to escape the terrifying reality of his own thoughts. Silence breeds strategy. Silence is the dark forge where the Machiavellian mind sharpens itself against the friction of its own profound depth. Stop fearing the quiet. The moment you utilize silence instead of running from it, you immediately separate yourself from the vast majority of the distracted population. People will misunderstand you. As you become ruthlessly selective with your energy, the people who have not made that same commitment will feel the distance growing. Let them feel it. Your ultimate loyalty is to your future empire, and never to the comfort of people who have chosen to remain permanently stagnant. You carry no passengers. Every man who has ever risen to genuine dominance made this exact painful choice to prioritize his becoming over his temporary belonging. The ascent is lonely. Accept the profound isolation of the climb as the necessary price you must pay for the untouchable view from the peak. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I pay the price. The sixth law, the invisible warfare. The moment you commit to this path, you have effectively declared a silent war. No weapons are drawn. This is an invisible conflict fought entirely within the boundaries of your own daily habits and the hidden corridors of your mind. It will test you. It will demand a level of psychological endurance that permanently separates the men who merely talk about power from those who possess it. Focus is a battlefield. It is the mental equivalent of holding a strategic position under heavy fire, while every internal instinct screams at you to surrender. The weak eventually fold. The Machiavellian man silences the voice of comfort and holds his ground with the cold finality of someone who burned his boats. A great strategist knows the greatest victories are always secured inside the mind of the sovereign commander, long before the physical battle even takes place. Decision is your armor. When you decide with absolute finality, you create an impenetrable psychological state that cheap digital distractions simply cannot pierce. Willpower is completely useless. Willpower is a fragile and emotional resource that exhausts itself by the afternoon, while identity is a permanent fortress that never crumbles. You simply refuse engagement. You no longer fight distraction, but rather look at it as something completely irrelevant to the dangerous weapon you have now become. A lion ignores grass. It does not need discipline to avoid eating weeds because it is fundamentally built to hunt and consume raw meat. Know your true enemies. The first enemy is comfort, which disguises itself as a well-deserved reward and whispers that one little distraction will not hurt your progress. Tomorrow never actually comes. The second enemy is comparison, which weaponizes social media to make you measure your quiet progress against someone else's fake external performance. The dangerous never look sideways. The third enemy is premature satisfaction, where early momentum makes you loosen your grip just enough to lose everything you just gained. Always push forward colder. Treat every victory as a new starting line and advance with even greater hostility toward your own limitations than you did yesterday. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I hold the line. The seventh law, the architecture of dominance. No empire was ever constructed on a fragile foundation of fleeting inspiration. Empires require cold structure. Deliberate and non-negotiable systems must operate relentlessly regardless of how the builder feels, or what chaotic events unfold outside the fortress walls. Your mind needs architecture. It must be engineered with the exact same precision and intentionality that a legendary general applies to a brutal military campaign. You are conquering yourself. Machiavelli observed that the prince who left his days to random chance was a prince who would eventually be slaughtered by chance. Structure is your armor. The man who builds his daily routine with Machiavellian precision becomes completely immune to the entropy that slowly destroys ordinary men. Start before the dawn. The first moments of your day are the most psychologically vulnerable and strategically valuable window of time you will ever possess. Claim the quiet space. Before the noise begins and the demands of the world colonize your attention, your mind is malleable and open to absolute direction. Feed it the mission. Before you consume a single piece of external content, you must explicitly define the single objective that will advance your empire today. Lock the target in. Build your entire day around protecting your ability to execute that one objective in blocks of deep and completely uninterrupted focus. Shallow work is worthless. True dominance is forged in singular immersion, where hours pass like minutes because your cognitive capacity is funneled into one violent strike. Guard these silent hours. Defend your work blocks with the ferocity of a predator protecting its kill, because they are the absolute foundation of your future untouchability. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I build the empire, the eighth law, the unbreakable crucible. There will come a definitive moment. If you are truly committed to this dark path, a moment will arrive when the entire world conspires to break your focus simultaneously. Everything shatters at once. Carefully calculated plans will fracture. The allies you trusted will betray you, and the monumental vision you built will suddenly feel like a complete delusion. You will be tested. In that exact brutal moment, the ultimate difference between a sovereign ruler and a forgotten peasant is not determined by talent or financial resources. It is your endurance. The true test of your power is your ability to hold your attention locked on the target when holding it feels completely impossible and endlessly painful. Machiavelli understood this crucible. He did not write his masterworks on power from a position of luxurious comfort, but rather from the terrifying depths of a cold political exile. He lost his entire world. Everything he built was stripped away by chaotic circumstances beyond his control, but instead of collapsing into despair, he turned his profound isolation into a deadly weapon. He built an empire of thought. He transformed his absolute lowest point into a psychological blueprint that has successfully guided conquerors and emperors for over 500 years of human history. Comfort is a fatal trap. The man who can only maintain his discipline when the weather is fair and the markets are favorable is not actually focused at all. He is simply comfortable. Comfort creates a dangerous illusion of power that will instantly evaporate the second the universe decides to test the structural integrity of your newly built mindset. You must become the storm. To become a truly untouchable force in this world, you must stop viewing chaotic disruptions as unfair punishments and start seeing them as mandatory tests of your identity. Life asks a brutal question. When the system fractures your plans, it is simply demanding to know if you actually believe in your vision, or if you were only committed when the path was easy. You must remain ice cold. The Machiavellian response to utter destruction is to extract the tactical intelligence from the failure and advance forward with even greater surgical precision. Never mourn a broken plan. Do not spiral into useless self-doubt when the results are delayed, but rather tighten your execution, eliminate the internal inefficiencies, and restructure your daily architecture immediately. This is your immune system, processing extreme adversity, not as a reason to surrender, but as raw data, makes you infinitely more dangerous than the version of you that existed yesterday. Survive the worst. And as you emerge each terrifying crucible sharper and colder than before, you realize with absolute certainty that external forces can no longer dictate your emotional state. You are completely untouchable. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I cannot be broken. The final law, the sovereign transformation. You are still sitting here. The vast majority of weak men clicked away minutes ago because the brutal reality of achieving true dominance was far too cold for them to handle. You proved your endurance today, sitting with a philosophy that outlasts empires while the modern world actively pulls you away, is itself a profound act of psychological warfare. Look back at the journey. Walked out of the endless scroll of meaningless distraction, crossed the violent internal battlefield, executed ruthless elimination, and built the daily architecture of an absolute ruler. You are no longer prey. You started this intensive session as a scattered resource being silently consumed by the digital machine, but you are leaving it as a hardened psychological fortress. The shift is completely permanent. Did not just absorb a collection of temporary productivity hacks, but rather an ancient operating system designed specifically to make you immune to modern manipulation. This is not mere theory. Every single principle we covered is a proven strategic blueprint that you must now aggressively deploy to conquer your own potential and dominate your chosen reality. The choice is entirely yours. You can fold this blueprint away and return to your pathetic existence, or you can internalize this violent power and build an unstoppable empire. Action separates the rulers. A man wielding laser focus does not just try harder on Mondays, but fundamentally changes his neurological identity to become a permanent, immovable object. Claim your new reality now. This tactical transmission shifted your mindset even one single degree toward absolute power. You need to cement your place in this relentless digital army. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Machiavellian Mind right now and turn on notifications immediately so you never miss another psychological weapon we hand you in this war. Share this with an ally. The world wants you weak, distracted, and permanently anxious. But today you have officially revoked their access to your highly protected cognitive bandwidth forever. I want you to drop this final affirmation in the comments. I am the Empire. Control your mind always. The world belongs exclusively to the man who can hold his icy focus, while the rest of civilization burns in the fire of its own distraction.